Welcome to What's Going On, the weekly podcast and videocast of First United Methodist Church in Yankton, South Dakota.
Hi, and welcome to this week's episode of What's Going On. I'm Pastor Katie here at First United Methodist, and I'm glad you could join me for this episode. This past weekend, we had something kind of exciting happen in the church in that our bishop came to visit us, which was pretty great. So Bishop Lanette Plambeck, who is the resident bishop of both the Dakotas Conference of the United Methodist Church and the Minnesota Conference, took time out of her busy schedule to come hang out with us here on Saturday afternoon. We had about 25 or so people come out to visit with her, get to know her a little bit, and be able to ask questions. So I want to share a little bit about that conversation and some of the reflections that I have and some of my takeaways from it. The first thing is I really have been so impressed with Bishop Lanette and for her leadership. She started in January, and she's someone I think that's had to really dive in the deep end. She's a new bishop. This is her first appointment as a bishop, and she has done incredibly well at navigating very difficult waters as far as handling disaffiliations within the conference, trying to cast vision for the future, get us focused, and really be able to listen to people. And I think that's the big reason that she came to Yankton this weekend, was to listen to our people. And so I'm really grateful for those of you who came out to offer and to lend your voices for her to get to know us a little bit better. And I would say, when I reflect on the afternoon and on our time together, one of the big things that came across for me was hearing the amount of grief that all of us are still carrying. That, I think, more than anything, is what translated to me in the conversation, in the questions, in the what's next. Is there's a lot of grief over what we have all been through, what we are all dealing with, recognizing that it's not just something in our local church, but that it is more broad than that. However, every local church has grief that is specific to it. And I'm really glad that the bishop could hear that. I think that's a big part of our ministry right now, is recognizing where we are as a people and what we carry, because it helps us to understand how we're going to move into the future. And recognizing that grief affects our ability to see what God might have in store. And I don't think it's a bad thing that we're grieving. I want to say that and say that again. Grief is not a bad thing. Grief means that there is love. If you grieve someone that you've lost, if you grieve a job that you've lost, if you grieve maybe a place that you've lived, you grieve it because you've loved it. And grief is love that doesn't have anywhere to go anymore. And so I hear in the grief, I hear a great love for this church. And so I want to name that, and to name that grief isn't something that just magically goes away. It's something that we carry with us. It shapes who we are, but we can also recognize it and recognize how it is affecting our ability to assess what is happening now and where we want to go. We can get stuck kind of with our grief blinders on sometimes, where if because of whatever we've lost meaning so much to us, we can be blind to the gift of the present. So, and that's kind of what I'm hoping to avoid a little bit. So one of the questions that I heard asked to the bishop was about, what do we do with the people who are not here anymore? Maybe, there's the grief around those who've chosen to leave, but also those who have just sort of fallen away or are just kind of maybe half in, half out sort of situation. And around the question of people responding, if asked, saying things like, well, I'm just not being fed. And the question was asked to the bishop, what does that mean? What do we do with that? And the answer is, that's a hard question to answer for someone else and what they mean by that. It could mean that there is something that we're doing as a church that is not meeting people's needs, and maybe that's something for us to reflect on. Maybe maybe it's something within their own life, and it's something, you know, for them to be reflecting on, is whose job is it to be feeding? Whose responsibility is it to make sure that someone is fed? Those are all good kind of questions to be asking, because there's a lot of assumptions that can feed into statements like that. So that was one of them. Another one was grief around our sanctuary being not full. This one is the one that I really want to spend some time with in this podcast, because I think it is indicative of where we've been as a church, and also one of the biggest shifts moving forward. And again, as I talk about the church, I'm not just talking about this church specifically, but about the church as a whole. And so for years and years and years and years and years and years, the primary indicator for healthy, successful, viable, vital churches was worship numbers. So much so that that was, you know, a weekly requirement for us to turn into the conference, what are your average worship attendance? And that is how, you know, like, what is your membership? Well, how many people are coming on a Sunday? How many services do you have? You know, is the sanctuary full? And because for years and years and years and years and years and years, that was the main part of church. That was like the culmination. If you do nothing else in church, you're going to attend worship service. And frankly, there were a lot of people that is the only part of church that they ever participated in, was Sunday worship and just coming and being a part of that service. They didn't really get involved in anything else, but there really wasn't a push to do that. Being a part of church meant attending worship services. And it looked good when the sanctuary was full. It meant that we were doing a good thing and that people were coming, and the church was successful. And not to say that we don't track other things as well, but they weren't nearly as important as what is your worship attendance. Now, obviously, COVID threw everything into a loop, and I know that you're probably so sick of me talking about it, but the reality is COVID accelerated a lot of trends that were already in existence prior to COVID. And one of those trends was lessening of worship attendance. There was a decline in worship attendance. It used to be, back in the 50s and 60s, to be considered a regular worshiper, a regular attender of worship at a church, you would have been in church 3 out of 4 Sundays a month. 3 out of 4, meaning maybe one Sunday you're sick or you're traveling or something, but on average, you were in Sunday worship 3 out of 4 Sundays a month. Out of 52 weeks out of the year, you were there over 40. So we have that in our mindset. Now, as time has gone on, that number has shifted, so much so that prior to COVID, it was down to, if you attended a worship service once a month, you were considered a regular attender of a church, or you would consider yourself to be a regular attender of a church if you were actually in the service in the physical location once a month, which means 12 times a year. So even prior to COVID, regular worship attendance and that perception of regular worship attendance dropped from 40 times a year to 12. Now, post-COVID, regular worship attendance for churches to consider someone to be, or for someone to consider themselves to be a regular worshiper, if they were to fill out an online survey, once every 6 to 8 weeks. So now, now the average worship attender attends services in person in the church on average, or at least maybe not the average, but 8 times a year. 8 times a year. It dropped significantly. But we still have in our minds that the greatest marker of a church's vitality is how many people do we have in the pews on a Sunday morning or whenever we have worship service. And that just really doesn't match with the reality of people anymore. And so I want to acknowledge that there is that anxiety there as people look around on a Sunday morning, although I will say that our worship attendance is growing again. And so I do want you to be encouraged in that. Is it where it was 10, 15, 20 years ago? Probably not. But the world isn't where it was 10, 15, 20 years ago either. And so let's keep that in mind. The second thing I want us to think about is that because worship attendance has become less of a priority, we've had to look at other ways to engage people in the church. I was really grateful. The pastor of Vermilion First United Methodist, Pastor Jordan, was in attendance on Saturday as well, and he named something that I felt like was really insightful, and I want to share that. He said that in their church, one of the things they started to do and to realize was worship attendance was one metric of understanding and for people to connect to the church. But he goes, but we also do a dinner church. That's another metric for people, and the people who attend dinner church aren't necessarily the same people who attend worship services. And then they also have a choir. And the people who attend that choir are not necessarily the same people who attend the dinner church or the worship service. And then they also do something else, some sort of prayer something. I wasn't quite clear on what it was, but that again, that's pulling in even different people. And so he said, like, if I only look at our worship service attendance, that can be really hard because that's small. But that is only one way in which we are reaching people. And for him, it was in Vermilion. In that it doesn't show the whole picture. So let's try that again. So how do I explain this? So as many of you know, my I guess we're going to call it my hobby now because I don't have really a lot of hobbies, but I have committed to this, and that is working out. That I really enjoy working out and weightlifting and all that fun stuff. And part of what my gym does are these body scans that we have to take quarterly. So normally when you're like doing an exercise program, one of the main things that people look at is they get on the scale. Have I lost weight, right? Or so for someone like me, I'm always looking, have I lost any weight? Maybe someone who's on the other end of the spectrum, maybe they're looking to gain some weight, right? The scale tends to be our go-to metric. Man, I've been working out, I've been lifting weights, and I've lost, 2 pounds? How can that be? I've been killing myself for months and months and months, and I've only lost 2 pounds? How is that possible? That's because the scale is only one metric. It's not telling you the whole story of what's going on in your body. And so we do these body scans, and the body scan tells you this is how much water weight you have in you. This is how much weight is in your lean mass, so your muscles. This is how much weight of you is fat. And this is, and it breaks it down by percentage. It breaks it down by muscle groups and areas. And guess what? Oftentimes, you look at the scale, oh man, I only lost 2 pounds. How is that possible? I'm working out. Well, turns out maybe you've gained 4 pounds in muscle and you've lost 6 pounds of fat. So you've lost 2 pounds total, right? Because you went up 4 in muscle and you went down 6 in fat. If you only looked at the scale, you wouldn't see the difference there, right? So in our gym, we talk about a lot about, what are your non-scale victories? How are your clothes fitting? How are you performing different tasks in the gym? Are there things that you could do now that you couldn't do before? Are you lifting heavier than you did before? Are you doing your box jumps higher than you've ever done before? We turn to all these other metrics to help measure our progress, because the scale isn't always the most helpful metric. It can be helpful, and it tells you something that's true, but it's not telling you the full story. And for me, I feel like if we equate our church success only by looking at what is happening on Sunday mornings, it is like we're only looking at the scale, but it's not giving us the full measure of what is happening in the body of the church. Because the reality is, things are shifting. The future of the church is shifting away from centralized large gatherings and really moving back, almost, biblically back, to more small groups that are in the community, that are meeting people where they are, that are creating these genuine relationships where people can have deep conversations and find connections and find God once again. And those things are happening in our church. The hard part about it is we don't always see it. If we are not a part of those things, then we don't see it. What we see is Sunday mornings, right? What we see is, we can look around us on Sunday mornings, or if we're watching the stream, we can see the people that are in church. We can see the numbers on the stream. But sometimes the real work of the ministry, the real work of the mission, is happening away from our eyes. The hard part and the challenge is learning to look for where things are growing, and learning to recognize that just because one area might not look like it once did, that the church isn't doing something worthwhile. So worship might not look the same. And again, I want to acknowledge that I think our grief plays a part in that, because when we're grieving the loss of something that we love, and maybe it's people that we love, and we're grieving the fact that the people that we have loved have chosen to walk away, what we see are the holes that they've left behind. What we see are the gaps that have been created by their absence. And it's hard to see what has come since, when we're so focused and hurt by what has left. And I want to say again, grief comes from a place of love, and it's not something that we can just shut off, but we can become aware of how grief is affecting our vision. And I do believe that grief is affecting our vision a little bit. And it's right to feel the feelings that you're feeling, but don't get stuck there. Look around at the people who have been coming, the people who have invested, and the things that are happening not on Sunday mornings. Because I think the true mark of our church is the totality of what we're doing, and not any one aspect. I look at our Wednesday nights, and I see Wednesday nights being just as vibrant as ever. Our youth group numbers, if you want to be a numbers person and that metric, our youth group numbers are still high. Our 605 numbers are still as big as ever. Like, those things are still vibrant, still happening. We've got small groups that did not exist when I came, that are growing and reaching people that we have not reached in a long time. People, especially, there is a demographic that is significantly difficult to engage in any sort of church function. And we've got a small group in particular that is reaching them. And the group I'm talking about are the Duns. So when they talk about like different metrics for the church, you have the nuns who are like, I do not affiliate with any religion. I have no religious affiliation. I do not attend anything. And then you have the Duns, who used to be involved in churches and are now not, most likely because they've been hurt in some capacity. Those are the most difficult people to reach because of the hurt and the grief that they carry. Our Bibles and brews are reaching those people. That small group, if you want to look, one, the numbers are growing. That group started with 2 to 3 people that were attending, and now they average 10 to 15 people that are coming every other Tuesday. Again, remember when I said that the average to be considered a regular attender of a church, you need to attend worship once every 6 to 8 weeks. Like, think about this for a moment. We have people who are attending every other week regularly, a small group of our church. Do you think that that's pretty amazing? Because I do. And for them, that is church right now. And that's one of the shifts we have to make, is that you can be connected and affiliated and involved and invested in our ministry and not be here on a Sunday morning. That's where church is going. Will we always have worship on Sunday morning? Yes. But is that going to be the main or the only indicator of the health of a church? No. I look at our men's night out. I look at, again, reaching people, having people who are invested and who are there once a month. Again, once a month. And you might think, oh, once a month. 12 times a year, the men of our church are gathering out of their own volition, of their own organization, and saying, we want to be together. We're going to break bread together. We're going to fellowship together. We're going to talk about Jesus together, and have a good time together. If that's not church, I don't know what is, because that's church right there. Okay. Like, I want us to see that's not something that is just meant to, well, if they attend that, then eventually they'll come to Sunday morning. Maybe that would be awesome. But also, that is fulfilling a need. That's church for people. Bibles and brews might be church for some people right now. And they're committed to that. And what are they doing? They're gathering. They're talking about Jesus. They're praying for one another. They're supporting each other. That's church, isn't it? We just talked about passionate worship and how passionate worship really is about loving God and loving each other. And that is worship. Do you see? Do you see that? I hope you do. Our youth group, those kids are here every single week. Most of those kids have a better attendance record than most of the adults in this church do. They are invested in this church. They are invested in their faith. They are invested in each other. When I look, one of the metrics that I always want to look at is, how are we doing in discipleship? How are people deepening in their faith? And one of the things I'm really seeing is there is a lot of depth of faith. People are digging in and saying, I want more than just the bare minimum. To me, when we focus only on worship attendance, instead of really encouraging people to dig deep and to join small groups and to have hard conversations and to be vulnerable and to give of themselves in service. I mean, I look around and I have seen more engagement from more of our people in the last few years than I probably for a long time. When I see new people show up at 6:05 to help with wiping the tables who'd never done that before, that's growth. And that is powerful growth. And that's the kind of growth I want to see more of. I don't necessarily just want more butts in the pews unless those butts are engaged in some way. Does that make sense? So, yes, things have changed in the church. Yes, things are hard. Yes, we carry a lot of grief, but also we have a lot of reason for hope. One of the comments that our district superintendent made to me on Saturday before she left, this is Rebecca, she said, I've just been so incredibly impressed by Yankton and the church and what you guys are doing and the mission and the ministry that you guys are engaged in. That's someone who doesn't carry the same grief that we do, that someone who isn't bogged down by what maybe once was in the same way that we are. And what she's seen is incredible growth, incredible commitment to our mission. And she's pointing other churches to us. I have been getting calls from other pastors asking how we've done what we've been able to do, especially in this season. And so I want you to hear that, and I want you to see that, because One of the things that I saw on Saturday was the bishop asking, what are the things that are happening? And you guys were just rattling off all of this amazing stuff. Yeah, we've got this care casserole ministry. We've given out over 200 care casseroles since May. Yeah, we're building a playground, which is starting next week, by the way, getting installed. Praise the Lord. Yeah, we've got, the loads of love and the banquet and our angel tree missions and ministries. Yeah, we've been doing this. Yeah, we've got our bells. Yeah, we've got our choir. Yeah, we've got blah, blah, blah. And then it just goes into our sanctuary isn't full. But this person that I really love decided not to come. And it's like you missed out on celebrating all that is because you're so consumed in the grief of what we've lost. And again, what we've lost has been so hard. But I don't want you to miss what is. Because what is pretty great. You as a church are doing such incredible things at such a difficult time in ministry. But you're doing it. You're doing it. And I'm so incredibly proud. I am so proud of all of you and the work and the commitment and the investment. You should be proud too. And you should see that and you should celebrate even while you carry the grief, even while you wish that some of those who have left could see what we see. And maybe they will. So those are my reflections from Saturday's Bishop visit. But it also ties in, I think, with our sermon series as we go through the 5 practices of fruitful congregations. We've done radical hospitality and passionate worship. This coming week, we're going to be talking about intentional faith development. So again, focusing not just on Sunday mornings in worship, but how are we as a church intentionally developing our own faith and developing the faith of others, investing in the faith of others. The soul scan has been a big part of that. Our children and youth ministries are a big part of our intentional faith development. But also, what are you doing to be intentionally part of a community, of a smaller group where you can bare your soul, where you can study and learn and ask the questions together? If you haven't been a part of a study for a while, I would encourage you, start maybe with Sunday mornings at 8:30. We're doing the Christianity 101. It's a very open, you can come. We don't necessarily build one on top of the other, but just come and check it out. It's a really safe and friendly way. If this is something that's foreign to you, there's no homework. It's me kind of sharing. We go through, we're going to have a topic. We go through scriptural basis. We talk about what the United Methodist Church teaches. And then we have time for questions and things like that. We've covered the sacraments so far. And this coming Sunday, we're going to be talking about grace, which is one of the United Methodist favorite things to talk about, primarily because we have sort of a unique way of talking about it. And so, again, I would encourage you, if you haven't ever tried a Bible study or a small group, try this one. Come this week, 8:30 on Sunday. I would love to have you. It's in Wesley Hall, so you just walk in the front doors and keep on walking. Bring your coffee with you. You can commiserate some of the others who think it's too early. But that's part of what we're going to be, what I've been trying to work on, and what we'll continue to work on is finding a place for everyone to belong, connecting to each other, and then connecting to the church and inviting others in. Because it's not so much about worship attendance, it's about connection. And let's be grateful and keep our eyes open for the ways in which we have so many people that are connected to our church who, for whatever reason, maybe aren't here on Sundays, but are here and are here regularly, and who are invested and who are committed and who are grateful for our ministry and mission. Good things are happening, and I want you to see it. I want you to hear it. I want you to know it. It's not just me saying it as the pastor because I'm a cheerleader or something. I'm saying it because it's true. It's true. So I hope to see you this Sunday as we talk about intentional faith development. And if you haven't already, be thinking about your soup kitchen. You can see I've got mine filled out. I haven't turned it in yet, so that's on me. Your soup kitchen form, get that filled out and how you want to help with that. Trunk or treat. Tiffany's going to be sharing some really important information with that in worship this Sunday, so you're going to want to be paying attention to that. Also, Women's Night Out. We'll have an event after trunk or treat that same night. We also have, you should have gotten your letters that included your estimate of giving. Hold on, let me pull that out. I've walked through this already. So we're going to turn those in the final Sunday of October. If you would consider, please, what would it look like to raise your pledge? Raise your pledge a percentage or two. Again, some of the gaps that we are experiencing are the gaps in giving from people who have left. And I really believe in the ministry and mission of this church, and I know that we can support it. And so I'm asking you to help. Please help. Consider upping your giving in whatever way you can. I know that it's not easy. I know that things are hard. But again, remember, this church exists for you. We exist to help you and your soul and your spiritual health and development. No one else in your life is going to be asking you those questions. No one else in your life is going to be helping you raise your children in the faith and have good character and integrity in the way that the church can help raise people. Nowhere else can you belong fully as you are than in the church. And so it's important that we all work together to support its mission and ministry. And so I'm inviting you to join me in supporting this church. So that is October 29th, and then November 5th is our charge conference. Rebecca will be in worship with us that day. She's going to be preaching, so you get a break from me. And then we will have charge conference following the worship service. We're also going to be providing lunch, so no reason not to stay. All right. So I hope you're able to hear that. If you have more questions about kind of the things that I've been trying to talk about, please let me know. And please understand and hear one more time. I hear you. I see you. Your grief is real. But let's not let grief tell the whole story, because hope is there. Our God is a God of resurrection and new life. And he's doing something. So until next time, God bless. Thank you for listening to this episode of What's Going On. We'd love to have you join us for worship here at the church on Sundays at 10 a.m. You can also find us online via our website at firstumcyankton.org or search for us on YouTube.